Welcome back to Bookview TV. Now, we're continuing our discussion with Joe Muto, author of the book An Atheist in the Foxhole, a liberal's 8-year odyssey inside the heart of the right-wing media. Now, Joe, you say in the book that you actually like Bill O'Reilly, as does Jon Stewart. And you say he's not an ideologue, but that he's ideological and very smart, versus the buffoon many try to portray him as. Now, it feels like shades of gray here, so help me understand Bill.
He's, I compare him to, like, your conservative uncle, you know, who you have to deal with at Thanksgiving, you know? Like, you might roll your eyes at everything he says, but there's still an affection there, you know? And even all these months later, I still, you know, I'll be flipping through channels and see him, and I'll be like, oh, yeah, there he is, you know, there's my guy. You know, so that being said, there are some foibles, I think, that, it would not surprise people to hear about him. He is pretty volcanic in his anger, especially at his staff. And often for not a lot of, you know, often for a very small transgression, you know, like if you mess up his lunch order, you know, he's going to scream at you. Basically, it's not, and it's scary because it means everyone on the staff is walking on eggshells and they're afraid to tell him anything because you never know how he's going to react. He might shrug it off, or he might get in your face and scream at you. So it makes for a pretty tense work environment sometimes.
I really loved the story pitch segment and how you repackaged old stories such as Adam and Eve, the Nativity, the Civil Rights Movement into these clear, concise pitches as Bill would want to hear them. Can you share a couple of those? And I got to ask, was it really that bad?
I wouldn't say bad, but he was. The pitch meetings were like survival of the fittest. You had to be concise. You had to be, you know, and you had to put the most salacious, gripping details at the front. You couldn't, if you rambled up to the story, even if it was a good story, he'd just shoot you down. He'd say, no, I'm not interested. You know, which is practical on his part, because if you can't pitch to him in 30 seconds, or not even 30, 10 seconds, if you can't pitch to him in 10 seconds, he can't pitch it to his audience in 10 seconds and tell them why they should care about it.
So pitch Adam and Eve for me in 10 seconds.
Well, so if you want to pitch the Adam and Eve story, you'd say, Bill, a liberal feminist is trying to get her husband in trouble and blaming it on a talking snake. You know, you'd say something like that. You know, you'd put the villain first. Bill was big on the villains. He always wants to know who's the villain in a story. So in that case, Eve would be the villain. You know, she's a radical feminist, so he loves to be the hero. Basically, that's why he always wants a villain. He wants to point to the villain and say, "I'm the hero who's going to straighten this villain out," and that's what he's looking for in a story.
You know, you talk about trying to influence Bill, and you know, one of the stories you told in the book was including tapes of the right-wing firebrand preacher John Hagee, who also said questionable things while the network was doing its old Reverend Right all the time gig. Now, you're really talking, though, about subtlety with a man whose main image is that of volcanic bull. How did you present that story?
Well, you know, I don't think he ended up even picking up the Hagee story. You know, I in the middle of the whole Reverend Wright thing, you know, that was sort of the pushback from the left. Well, John McCain's got this Reverend too, who says crazy things. But Bill, if I recall, was so caught up by Reverend Wright that he never gave Hagee any airtime. But that was my behind the scenes way of sort of trying to keep him honest. You know, I would always give him the counter argument. You know, he'd usually ignore the counter argument, but I'd like to think it soaked in a little bit maybe and made him a little bit more fair.
Now, one of the things that Bill's producer Jesse Waters is known for is the ambush video interview, and you and he ambushed his nemesis, Bill's nemesis, Rosie ODonnell, at a book signing.
One of his many nemesis.
Indeed. And then she beat you guys to the punch on her own website, airing the entire incident because she had cameras running. So I'm struggling with, I read it, and I read it a second time. I'm struggling with how that was not a disaster for Bill and the Factor.
How how it wasn't a disaster. Well, I mean, it was. He just likes the fact that he got a reaction out of her. You know, that he did sort of piss her off, and she, you know, she had us thrown out of the bookstore where we were ambushing her. I mean, that in and of itself is a victory. Anytime you can rile someone up on an ambush, that's a win. You know, you need that reaction that you can play in your teases and the bump in at the beginning of the segment. I mean, that's a victory. He got ratings out of it. To him, anything that he gets ratings out of is a victory. It would have been nicer if she hadn't released that video and we had it exclusively, but the way he looked at it is our audience hadn't seen it yet. Even though she released it on her website, you know, most of our audience didn't see it until we released it. So, you know, he considered that a big victory, actually, the Rosie ambush.
Well, it's no secret that Bill and Rush Limbaugh and, of course, Sean Hannity don't get along. Now, Bill did a radio program where he apparently laid into Rush and wanted to go at him on telly, but Roger Ailes intervened, and the process ended with Bill screaming at the phone after it was hung up. And that seemed a bit cowardly. Is it simple enough just to call Bill a bully who caved in that situation to a bigger one, or is there more to it?
Well, Bill hates when people try to interfere with his show. That's his number one pet peeve. But, that being said, he defers to Roger Ailes. Ailes is his boss, and Bill knows it, and sometimes he just has to take it from the boss. And he doesn't like it, but he's never, that I've seen, been openly insubordinate to Ailes. He'll always, you know, when Ailes puts his foot down, he knows he's lost at that point.
Exactly. Now, in the book, you were very graphic about your and Bill's disdain of the half-term governor from Alaska, Sarah Palin, and her need to always stick to talking points, and eventually Bill banished her from his show. What was it that didn't work with Bill, and why were Hannity and others so willing to give her a platform?
Bill was not as sycophantic to her as I think some of the other anchors were. And, you know, and he gave her the benefit of the doubt at the beginning, especially, and, you know, treated her like she was a smart, competent person, and she, you know, she just wasn't. She wasn't that person, which is shocking to me that Fox has rehired her, because she did not work out as a commentator, and they paid her $1 million a year, a couple million a year, I think, and she wasn't saying anything. She was coming on and just spouting talking points.
You know, in the book you talk about Bill's daily routine and how he worked in that Fox News headquarters building for a little more than about 4 hours a day, but and you saw him to be seen as very disciplined during that time. Walk us through Bill's daily timeline from that first conference call around about 9:30 in the morning.
He's up. My understanding is that he's up pretty early, you know, reading papers, and he doesn't read. He might be the last person on earth to get his news from the newspaper, from an actual physical newspaper. He doesn't, you know, surf the websites or anything like that. But he's up early reading the newspaper, watching the news, listening to the news radio, that kind of thing. And we do this morning call at about 9:30, 10 every day. And he just lays out, you know, it can be a long call if they're struggling for topics. It can be a long call, but he lays out what he wants in the show that day. But then he doesn't actually show up in the office until about 12:30, 1 o'clock, 1:30. But while he's being driven to work from Long Island, and while he's being driven, he's actually on the phone dictating the script of the show, which is pretty impressive. He's doing that all from sort of the top of his head. I assume he's maybe working off some notes, but you know, he is writing the show from the top of his head. You know, which a lot of anchors don't do. That's rare for an anchor to write most of their own stuff, let alone all their own stuff, which he does. You surprised me, quite frankly, when you revealed that Bill was living a somewhat modest, somewhat unostentatious life. His love of the free buffets at events. It all seemed odd in a world of rich media prima donnas. Would you think Fox would want that type of story out there showing him as a decent guy? Does Fox want that kind of story?
Yeah, they would think it would hurt their ratings, wouldn't it?
I mean, Bill might want that story out there. I mean, it would burnish his image. No, I think Fox would want that to be his image. That he is a regular guy. He's more so than anyone else. He's one of the folks. You know, I think they like that about him, and that's part of his shtick. That's always been his presentation of himself, is that he's just a regular Joe who happens to have this platform that 5 million people a night see. So I think they might actually, you know, they might like that depiction of him. They should pay me for burnishing his image.
Now, there's someone who we know would not agree that there's any niceness about him at all, and that's the feud that was on between him and Keith Olbermann. It was ugly. It was personal on both sides. Bill, though, was smart enough to disarm it, saying it was just giving Keith ratings and traction and extra material. And it ended up at one point with Jeff Immelt of GE and Rupert Murdoch ordering that a truce be called. What broke that truce? How did the truce actually start? What was it like to live through being there during that?
Well, I should say it took Bill almost 2 years, I think, to realize that he was giving Olbermann all this oxygen. You know, meanwhile, Olbermann's ratings just crept up and up and up. Eventually what happened, I mean, it started getting ugly. It started getting personal as Bill would go after Jeffrey Immelt at GE, the parent company of NBC at the time, and Olbermann would start going after Ailes and start going after Murdoch. And, you know, eventually that got the attention of, obviously, the people in the executive suites. And they did. They brokered this truce. These two bigwigs, Murdoch and Immelt, sat in a room and said, you know, ceasefire. And if I recall, I think Olbermann was the first one to break the ceasefire. And it was a weird time. It was a tense time to be on the show, because once again that was people interfering with Bill's show, which he hated. But this was coming from, I mean, when this was coming from Murdoch himself, Bill was not going to, you know, be the first one to break the peace, I guess.
Yeah. Whereas and that's part of the reason why he's still there and Keith is no longer where he is. I would venture that has something to do with it.
Right. Bill has a prickly relationship with the executives, but he knows when to stop, whereas I would say Olbermann did not.
There's definitely a small part of me that would find it fascinating to perhaps work for Bill and see him up close in that setting. And you did a lot to try and humanize him. You've been a good sport to sit through all this. I had my reservations reading this book about your motives and particularly the self-destruction it was having on you, but you've written a fair and balanced book, if I dare say and use that. And for the viewer of this, it's well worth taking the time to read. And it's been great fun getting to know you here on BookView TV, and I want to thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been a good time.
Joe Muto's book, An Atheist in the Foxhole, a liberal's 8-year odyssey inside the heart of the right-wing media, is published by Dutton, an imprint of Penguin. It's available on Amazon.com and .co.uk and in fine bookstores everywhere. Now, you can follow Joe Muto and his travels on Twitter, @JoeMuto, there's no space there, and via his website, www.joemuto.com. You've been watching BookView TV with Dennis Campbell. Please tune in again next week when another author will sit opposite me and share their passion for writing. Thank you for watching, and good night.